Impetuous Ritual is a Brisbane, Australia-based death metal band, and one that is often described as atmospheric death metal, ambient death metal, cavern core. There's been a lot of ways of describing what they do, which is quite an abstract form of death metal, which is obscurant by nature, not only in its identity and its art, but its performances, which are often sporadic in feeling, atmospheric in nature, and shrouded by choice. It's an anti-art sort of feeling that translates into some related projects such as Grave Upheaval and Portal. And in many ways, a lot of people had trouble finding the difference between those groups because they were all kind of done by similar people and on different tips within the zeitgeist they were creating themselves, which is an abstraction of death metal and black metal. And really, it was seen as more of a revolutionary, new and fresh thing back in the late 2000s and the early 2010s. And now we're many years past that point with this band, and in many ways they've evolved the sound without redefining what they are. And first we'll get into a song and get a like a very short idea of what this album is all about, and then try to sort of parse our way through the what this actually is as an experience and as death metal. So terror, horror, dissonance, dread, all of these are very important parts of the experience that you have with Impetuous Ritual, which is definitely a death metal experience in its construction and arrangement, but the obscure intention of the production values and the chosen guitar tones and just the general sound design means that it becomes so abstract that it blurs the lines between a lot of extreme metal subgenres in an interesting way. And again, this sort of hit its big peak around 2013. I name a bunch of bands here that were sort of that added to that in a big way. Everything from Mitochondrion and Ignivomus to Orcalian Oracle had a hand in what was kind of the sound of the time for death metal, that was something new and that wasn't just flatly old school. It was something of the era. And in a way, this is one of the few bands who stuck with it in a serious way and kept creating, whereas a lot of other bands fell off and moved on, or just evolved in a different way. But in this sense, we're getting what is essentially bestial or almost like war metal, in the sense that it is death metal. It is played extremely fast in chaotic bursts, and it is traditional when you look at it on paper. It's just that there are so many factors obscuring the reality of the what is actually being played that it distorts and becomes something else. It's a real bludgeon to anyone trying to make sense of it at first, but as you sit with each record, you realize that there are very intentional, especially with this band in particular. You'll find that everything about this music is generally intentional or presented in an intentional way, whereas a lot of bands in a similar style or who took influence from them really just went for chaos. So as you sit with each of these records and the drone of it all finally sinks in, as is the case with this record, eventually you find there is an arc to it, and that this is a double LP. It's quite long, and there are essentially three sides to it, which they each have their own kind of neurosis, and a lot of this relates to some of the sound design we found on Portal's Avow. I think it was the same guy doing a lot of the processes for that, and we get the same sense of severity and ambiance on this record. It's just that this is more abstract and emergent in a different way. which is less on a sort of a rant in many ways, and more just in a driven predatorial sense, where they're just attacking the patterns they've figured out. So, it's a very abstract thing to sort of describe to someone. It is best to just listen to, and I think that the thing I can appreciate about this is that it is pretty ruthless in its attack. And I mean, like, not only its multi-directional chaotic feeling, but also just the brutality of it. And you have to remember, these guys started a brutal death metal band before this and dropped it for this project. So there is that need to uh, for destruction, for aggression, and they are still very much riff driven. So much like Ascended Dead earlier this month, this is still an attack. It still has some old school sense of where death metal came from, and it manages to be aggressive throughout. And that's really what kept me engaged, was that they were just going for it in the way that they always have, and they returned with a lot of the spark and the enthusiasm that was always there with the group. So um, otherwise, I think this is one of their best general production jobs, not because it's clearer, but because it is more distinct. It does have that. I really loved Avow, and I feel like this has some of the same feeling embedded into its just dynamics. And yeah, I just enjoyed listening to this record quite a bit. And it comes down to that. So that's a high recommendation for me. You can get a lot more information in the written review, and you can check it out tomorrow.